I want to hear cannons. Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans does it again. Fire the cannons, Bucs.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Those up with the heads intercepted. At the 40. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25. 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And then the cannons come. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome back, Bucs fans, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. It is schedule release day, everybody, and it is the moment that we have waited for a little while. I mean, we've known the slate of opponents for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We've known their 2025 opponents since last year. We know the 2026 opponents. We even know the 2027 opponents if you go out there and look hard enough. But today, we have got the official order of these games, when the bye week is, the preseason matchups, everything you need to know is within the NFL schedule. We're going to break down some of the nuances in the 2025 Buccaneers season. But first and foremost, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, as always, Rhett Matthew. Joined alongside me, as always, my good buddy and co-host, the Philly High Roller himself, Evan Wanish. Evan, schedule's out, my friend. We are live.
It is, and it's obviously, look, the NFL can make a spectacle out of anything, I think, right? And it's just like you said, you've known the opponents. You have known this, and every other sport, it's all right. Here it is, and it just releases, right? But the NFL, it's we're gonna give you, we're gonna give you the opener, and then we'll give you a leak here, a leak there, and then you're checking Twitter all day, like you're freaking hunting for rumors about these leaks, and you have all these people that make the fake stuff, and that goes around, and then you're like, no, that's not real, and this and that, and it's finally here. You can finally sit down, make your travel arrangements, perhaps, if you're looking to go to any away games, if you're not in Florida, if you're looking to come down for a game, obviously looking to the primetime games, right? So that's what we're here to do, right? Just break down the schedule itself. Pretty straightforward show, but look at the stretches that they have. Maybe there's a particular stretch where it could maybe make or break the season, perhaps, or we'll talk about some of the primetime games as well. Obviously going to be against some high profile opponents, but we'll break down all of that and then some. But the Bucs have obviously, the division games are important, but when a division opponent is your week one opponent, it's even more important to get off to a hot start, which the Bucs have never started 0-1 in the Todd Bowles era. They are 3-0 on week one in the Todd Bowles era. So maybe just maybe. And actually, fun fact, they're actually 2-0 every single year. The Todd Bowles has been head coach. They've started 2-0. So they have a good stretch here. We talked about it before we went on. There's an interesting stretch in December that could really shift things, and we're here to break it down.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to be a true test for Tampa Bay. As you mentioned, the Atlanta Falcons going to be opening things up. The Buccaneers open things up with 2 games on the road. Before we dive into the regular season, I only bring this up. We really never talk about preseason, but I think this is interesting because, as far as I know, at least in the history of the show, this hasn't necessarily happened. Maybe
I know
wrong.
what you're getting at, and I just noticed it right before we went on.
It's pretty interesting. So this slate of opponents for the preseason: Tennessee Titans, Pittsburgh Steelers, Buffalo Bills. The Buccaneers will be at home for 2 of those games. Now, the reason we bring this up, the Bucs pretty regularly play the Titans in the preseason. The Bucs fairly regularly, feels like every 2 or 3, maybe 4 years, sometimes they play the Steelers in the preseason. The interesting thing about the Buffalo Bills is that normally when they assign the preseason games, you try to avoid any layover, I guess. You want to avoid scheduling a team in the preseason that you're going to match up with later in the year.
Yeah, you don't see that often.
The Buccaneers have the Buffalo Bills in the preseason for that 3rd game, and then they have the Bills again week 11. That game will be on the road November 16th. So the insight that basically the reasoning that I was told is the NFL tries their best to avoid it. and they just couldn't. It was really only a matter of time. I know. That's not really a good enough excuse for me, but that's the extent of my knowledge. I guess this is just kind of a rare thing, but here it is. I guess the main idea behind it as well is that since nobody really even plays in that third preseason game, this will not be consequential to that regular season matchup down the road. That is the reasoning that I overheard. But, I don't know.
Okay.
But, yeah, kind of interesting.
Yeah, I actually noticed that right before we went on. I was like, wait, the Bills. I was like, that's so yeah, normally you would see like the Jaguars or like obviously the Dolphins, but again, I didn't think the Dolphins because the Bucs were playing the Dolphins in the regular season. So sometimes you'll see like the Baltimore Ravens sometimes. Yeah, but yeah, it's the first time I've ever seen that. So that is interesting for sure.
4 primetime games for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year.
And by the way, really quick, Steven, the Bucs do have a home primetime game. It is against the Atlanta Falcons later in the year on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, 3 of those primetime games are going to be on the road, some tough matchups ahead. And then the one primetime home game they do have is against the Atlanta Falcons. That's going to be Thursday Night Football, December 11th. It'll be a short week, and that's a... Yeah, it's gonna be very important when you consider the opponents on each side of that game. We'll get to that. All right, week 1, we're kicking things off with the Falcons, an NFC South opponent. As you mentioned, Todd Bowles as a head coach here has really routinely got into a good start to the season. I think over the first 3 or 4 games, a lot of people have been pleasantly surprised with the position this team has been in over the years. This is going to be a true test. I mean, not only do the Falcons have a roster that you could argue in the NFC South pecking order is right behind Tampa Bay, but they may or may not have a quarterback now as well in Michael Penix Jr., who will be making that start. Even though they had Kirk Cousins on one leg throwing 500 yards against you last year, Penix could be a long-term issue. This will be the Bucs' first look at him.
Yeah, there's pros and cons, right? So one of the pros is that you're getting a guy early, right? This is, yes, I know Penix has played, but this is basically his rookie season, right? Like this is gonna be, he is the guy. He's gonna go through training camp as the one. The expectation he's gonna be the starter, and there's still some stuff that probably he has not seen in the NFL yet, and some stuff that Todd Bowles can throw at him. That being said, the Buccaneers have never played Michael Penix Jr. before. They obviously, dealt with Kirk Cousins and got carved up by Kirk Cousins, but they played the Falcons twice in the first 8 weeks, and then they were done with them. So they haven't seen Michael Penix Jr. So this is going to be their first time seeing him. So that's always a pro and a con, right? I'm almost treating this as like last year when the Bucs would play Jaden Daniels in the opener, almost like a rookie quarterback. Just yeah, he might not know exactly what you're going to throw at him, but at the same time, he might throw something a little bit different at you that you didn't expect. Maybe there's going to be some new wrinkles. Maybe, Zach Robinson, the Falcons offensive coordinator, maybe adding a few more wrinkles, knowing that Penix is the starter. He can add some different things to the offense. Maybe it's a new look offense there for the Falcons. But I do think getting them week 1 is a positive thing because I think you would rather, and this is assuming Penix is the real deal, right? I think most of the time you assume good things about a young quarterback, but if he's good, yeah, I think you'd want him with less experience, right? You don't really want to play him as much, in week 9, week 10. I understand the Bucs are playing the Falcons late, but you cross that bridge when you get to it. So I think, and again, we're not going to break down every game in depth, right? Like we have a season prediction show in August, and we have a full game preview show the week of. So there's going to be plenty of time to talk about the Atlanta Falcons, but I do find it interesting that the Bucs are essentially, I think, facing off against another rookie quarterback here.
Yeah, and another note before we move on to week 2 here, with Atlanta, at least the last couple of years, it seems like the Buccaneers always play them they play those 2 games relatively close to each other. It seems like they haven't had to wait any longer than like 6 or 7 weeks before they see the Falcons twice. Now, you got them week 1. You don't see them again all the way until week 15, that Thursday night game that we had mentioned already. So, yeah, it will be interesting. That first week of December, we cannot stress that enough. That could make or break the season, regardless of how you look headed into that. But let's get into week 2. The Buccaneers open things up. 2 road games before they have their home opener in week 3. And they
Darn you, Rays. Darn you.
And they have a primetime game in week 2. Feels pretty early, but I mean, we'll see how it goes. The Buccaneers, I didn't realize this until today. The Bucs have not won a primetime game.
Mm-hmm. Can I guess the last? Do you know it? I want to guess.
I know it. I want to see if you can guess it because
wasn't it the wasn't it Christmas?
It was Christmas.
It was Christmas. Yeah, not last year though. Christmas of 2023 or no 2022.
2022
against the Cardinals. Yeah, and Trace McSorley was the starting quarterback, and they won on a Ryan Suckup last second field goal. I remember that. Yep.
What a Christmas present that was. The last
the last two, I believe the Bucs are 0-6 the last 2 seasons in primetime. They have not won a primetime in the regular season. If you want to get technical with it, the Bucs beat the Eagles in the wild card round in 2023. That was technically on Monday Night Football. But in the regular season with Baker Mayfield as their quarterback, they have yet to win a primetime game.
2023, they only had 1 primetime game. In 24, they got 4. This year, they will have 4, so hopefully they can improve that overall primetime record. But Monday Night Football against the Houston Texans in Week 2. That'll be on ABC. Week 3, the home opener for Tampa Bay. You got a New York Jets team coming to town. That is going to be a 1 o'clock kickoff. You got 2 home games in a row. So let's talk about these first 2 home games, really. Week 4, you've got the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles coming to town for a 1 o'clock kickoff. I got to tell you, seems like whenever the Eagles are the defending Super Bowl champions and they come and play in Tampa early in the season at 1 o'clock, they usually get the brakes beat off of them. It seems like it now. Again, the Bucs have seen the Eagles early in the season and not fared as well. But I'm curious how this game shakes out. You've got, in my opinion, 2 very winnable games here to start the home. Yeah, I know. Week 3 and week 4, your thoughts?
So one thing, week 3, obviously, good luck to anybody going to the Rays or Bucs game because both are happening at the same time.
I really hope they flex the Bucs game.
It's not gonna get flexed. They should flex the Rays game. They're not gonna flex. Not that early, So
maybe we get a rain delay.
Maybe another thought of the Eagles game. It's actually kind of funny. Yes, the Eagles played in Tampa early last year. Didn't go well for the Eagles. They also played Tampa early last year as well, and it was week 4. So it's the exact same thing. They played them on September 29th last year. This year they're playing them on September 28th. So the exact same time they are playing the defending Super Bowl champions again. The last time that the Eagles came into town as defending Super Bowl champions, like you said, that was also early in the season. It was week 2, 2018, and Ryan Fitzpatrick, that was that first play to Deshaun Jackson. You had all that stuff there. But, I mean, obviously, you look at the first 4 games as a whole, and, the Eagles are the defending champs, but the Bucs have played them well. Starting on the road 2 games in a row is not easy, right? It's not going to be an easy task, especially and then also not only that, but you're playing on Monday night against Houston, so that means you got a short week against the Jets, right? You do have a little bit of a short week there, so it's going to be a different look Jets team as well. So I do think there is a potential. 4-0 isn't impossible, right? And again, we're not doing the season predictions right now because a lot can change between now and August, right? Like that'll be one of our last big shows before the regular season begins. But you look at those 4 games and you don't see any. You're like, man, well, they're not winning that one. You could see a world where I think Philly's gonna be tough because I still think they're a really good team. But the Bucs have shown they can beat them. So I do think there's potential there. But 2 straight road games and then 2 straight home games for the Bucs to open up the year before they head out west.
Yeah, and I really do like having quality opponents early on in the season because, again, as we said to start the show, like Todd Bowles' Bucs teams start hot. They play
it's
terrible.
That middle.
they play terribly in the middle of the season, and then they have to dig themselves out of a hole, which we'd like to avoid this season. But They have a history of playing well early on, and I think that when you can set the tone early, especially against quality opponents, do you remember how juiced up everybody felt after beating the Lions early in the season last year? That was huge. That was one of the biggest wins of the regular season for Tampa Bay at that time. So, even a quality win, I I don't know the level of team that Houston is going to be, but I would garner that.
I mean, they were a playoff team last year.
Yeah, and CJ Stroud, his rookie season picked the Bucs apart. So
yeah, and that's a game on the road. So
yeah, you'd like to see a strong performance there. I think this is a good slate to start the season. But like you said, they go out west here in Week 5 to Seattle. It's going to be a 4 or 5 p.m. kickoff on CBS. The Seattle Seahawks, a different-looking team. Again, moving on from Geno Smith. Sam Darnold, I believe, the man in the driver's seat there.
Yep.
Your overall thoughts on this matchup? I think this could be, I don't want to say like trap game. That sounds ridiculous, especially after the season that Sam Darnold had with Minnesota. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, I think people, when you look at this early slate, and this is a brutal stretch of the schedule here, by the way, from Philly to the bye week, which we'll get to, this could, without a doubt, be one of the sneaky tough games on the schedule, I think. I think a lot of people are quick to overlook Seattle in that sense.
I think it really depends on if you believe Darnold's 2024 was real or not. If you think that was a fluke, well, then maybe Seattle's looking a little less intimidating, right? But heading to Seattle, traveling out west is never easy. So, that stadium is still really, really good, and it brings a home field advantage. The Bucs haven't played there. It just hasn't worked out. The Bucs haven't played there since 2019, I believe. So, it's been a little bit since the Bucs played there, and we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, last time these two teams played was in Munich, Germany. That was a Bucs home game though, so. No international games for the Bucs on this schedule. I do think it's coming sooner rather than later. At some point, it's gonna end up being like every team's gonna have one on their schedule every year. That's just what it's gonna be.
How about? Did you see the situation in Minnesota?
Oh, got screwed.
God,
Screwed.
I thought it was criminal when they had the Jags. I thought it was criminal last year when they had the Jags play 2 weeks in a row in I think it was London, correct? That was bad enough, but the fact that you're traveling in between for internet, that is insane. And I guess, to the fans' advantage, they're counted as away games. Both of those will be road games for the Vikings, but that is absolutely brutal, and I really hope that if and when the Buccaneers do play an international game again, it is not in that fashion, because that is, God, dude, that is brutal.
And also the Vikings are also playing on Christmas. For the Vikings players, just brutal. Also, really quick, there was a lot of rumors going around, and we'll get to it again. We will get back to the Bucs thing, but a lot of rumors going around. The Bucs were going to be playing the Rams on Thanksgiving night. Ended up being not true. The Bucs are playing the Rams at night, but not Thanksgiving night. Thank God, because I have no interest in doing anything on Thanksgiving.
I agree. We'll cover that game when we get to it, but let's get back to Week 6 here. Buccaneers are back at home, and an interesting note, leading up to the bye week, which is Week 9, the Buccaneers' last 3 of 4 games are on the road. Mm-hmm. This is their
the month of October, 3 of 4.
Yeah, this is the last home game until the bye week for them, October 12th, Week 6. 1 o'clock kickoff on CBS. They are taking on the San Francisco 49ers, a team that, again, they really have not had much success against these recent years. They've played well, some years better than others, but this is another tough matchup in a string of incredibly tough matchups. The last 2 games here before the bye week in Week 9. On the road for another primetime contest, Week 7. I believe this is going to be Monday Night Football.
Yes.
7 p.m. kickoff against the Detroit Lions. And then, of course, right before the bye week, you get your first look at the New Orleans Saints. Week 8.
And Tyler Shuck.
4:05 p.m. kickoff for the Bucs and Saints. But this stretch of the schedule here, I would say mainly these 5 games. Philadelphia at home, on the road against Seattle, back at home for San Francisco. 2 straight games on the road. The Lions and the Saints. This might be the toughest stretch of the schedule, if I'm being honest with you.
Yep. I mean, if looking at it, if you go 3-2, I think you have to be happy with that. I think if you go 3-2, I mean, if you go 2-3, I don't think it's the end of the world. Just try and avoid 1-4, 0-5, right? I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing. But yeah, I mean, if you go 3-2 or better, like I think you have to be absolutely thrilled with that.
And I think that's what makes this stretch even more critical too, as you had kind of alluded to, the time of year that it is happening. We've said a couple of times now that these Buccaneer teams under Todd Bowles will start the season hot, and then right around week 5, week 6 is when the wheels fall off. That can't happen this season against these opponents here. I mean, I guess that, yes, you can look at the history and say, oh, it can absolutely happen, but do we want it to happen? Is that how you want to make the postseason?
That's not sustainable also.
Exactly. I don't know if that's a true model for success, especially when you want to decide a lot of things about the identity of this team, and especially the identity of your head coach. These have to be the most winnable games of the season when it comes to just like sheer importance. But believe it or not, there's another stretch later on that we will get to that may decide.
That I think is more important, but maybe not as tough, but more important. Yeah.
I do agree. So week 9, the Buccaneers get the bye week, which I'm glad to see, like decent placement on the bye week. We've been catching a break.
Good.
We've been catching a break the last couple of years, ever since that debacle in 2017 when they
it was 2019 because they played it in London. That was a home game, and they had like their whole no, okay, I know what you mean. Yeah, with the hurricane.
Well, we've had several.
There's
seasons.
a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, we've had a lot of tomfoolery.
If you're talking the hurricane thing, where like they had to play 16 straight or whatever, yes, that was 2017. I thought you meant the one where they played basically it was like 7 weeks or 6 weeks without a home game.
Yeah.
Because it was like they went like road, London, by road, and then went back home. That was 2019. But yeah, the 2017 was when the hurricane hit and they forced the Bucs and the Dolphins, who was scheduled to be week 1, they forced them to play. They moved it to week 11, and then they forced them to play 16 straight. So yeah.
The first game coming out of the bye week here, they are back at home, by the way. Week 10, 1 o'clock kickoff against the New England Patriots. It's been a long time since the Patriots have played in Tampa. I think that Color Rush game in
2017. 2017. Yep, it was Thursday Night Football. Yep.
Also, the only time in Patriots franchise history that they wore the white jerseys and the white pants.
There you go.
Yeah. A little bit of we don't really do Patriots trivia on this show, but I'm a bit of a uniform snob, so I think stuff like that is very interesting. Uniformgami? I don't know what the term is, but it's like scoregami, but it's a play on the uniform.
Yeah. But yeah, New England's first time being in Tampa in a little bit.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, been a long time. But I mean, and then you got arguably you could say it's your 2 toughest games. You could maybe say that both are on the road and both are against high quality opponents potentially. And this is another perk of the Bucs schedule here. Coming up here is you're going to be your coldest weather game. November 16th, Buffalo. It probably won't be frigid, but it's not going to be warm.
But I mean, if that's the coldest game on your schedule.
Yeah. You got lucky.
You did get very lucky, because the fact that they didn't get Buffalo in January or late December.
Yeah, I mean, even Seattle in like December can get a little nasty.
Yeah, especially once that rain kicks in and the wind picks up, the 12th man gets involved. So when it comes to weather, I think the Buccaneers dodged a lot of bullets. But yeah, you had mentioned coming out of the bye week, week 10, you're at home against the Patriots. Then you got a tough opponent on the road in week 11. That is the Buffalo Bills. 1 o'clock kickoff for that. And then week 12. November 23rd. Monday Night Football? Sunday Night Football?
Against the Rams, that's Sunday night.
Yeah, I thought so. Another primetime game on the road against an opponent that the Buccaneers don't have a great track record.
They did beat them the last time they played them, just saying.
They did indeed. You are correct. I remember it was a nail-biter.
Was that game?
It was definitely an interesting fashion, but they got it done. These 2 games here, as you had mentioned, some of the tougher games on the schedule, but I mean, when you're going coast to coast like that, I don't know. I mean,
after already being on the road too, like you're already on the road, and then you got to go out to the West Coast. Not gonna be easy. So really makes the other 2 home games you have in the month of November like New England, and then the other one we're going to talk about, like very important. Like they're almost like must wins.
Yeah, two massive road tests there for the Buccaneers, and then 3 straight home games. So that'll be a nice
That's
little
nice.
homestand
Yes.
for the Ray J faithful. November 30th, Week 13, 1 o'clock kickoff. You have got the Arizona Cardinals, a team that they have not played in Tampa since, I think, 2019.
2019, I was at that game also.
I was also at that game. That was
Yeah.
a good time. That was the game that Vernon Hargraves got benched.
Yeah, that was his last game. He got released later that week.
Whoo, man, oh man. Week 14. Here is the stretch of the schedule here that we had kind of talked about. Ultimately, I think
Could make or break their season.
It really could. When you talk about the late season division deciding games, that you've got all of them back to back to back here. Week 14, 15, and 16, you've got an NFC South opponent. Week 14, at home, 1 p.m. kickoff, you got the New Orleans Saints for the second time this season. Then you got a short week. At home, Thursday Night Football against the Atlanta Falcons, the second time they will see Atlanta. And then the Carolina Panthers, the first time they will see the Panthers all year. So we'll have a pretty strong idea of what that Panthers team looks like going into that game, which is nice. But you get your other 2 NFC South opponents out of the way, and then the last 2 of the 3 weeks of the season, you're playing Carolina, which, again, it always seems to happen that way with at least one of these NFC South teams. But, yes, at home against the Saints, at home against the Falcons, and then on the road against the Carolina Panthers for a 4:30 p.m. kickoff. That short week between New Orleans and Atlanta, that is a backbreaker.
Yeah, the only good thing is that they are home, so there is no need to there's no travel needed. So that they are home. But I mean, look, you're playing 4 division opponents in the final 5 weeks of the season. I mean, you want to talk about really, like I said, make or break. Like, even if you're in control of the NFC South, come at the start of after that Arizona game, let's say you're in control, you have a bad month of December, all of a sudden you might not be in control. And I don't really expect New Orleans to compete for this division. I still think it's probably between the Bucs and the Falcons. But I mean, the Panthers can be feisty. We saw it last year at times.
Yeah.
And if Bryce Young continues to develop a little bit, who knows with them? So yeah, I mean, 4 out of your last 5 games being division opponents could really, really make or break this Bucs season.
Yeah, these last 2 weeks of the season, by the way, Bucs are on the road for Week 17, December 28th, 1 p.m. kickoff. That'll be on Fox, taking on the Miami Dolphins.
Also, really quick, to play little devil's advocate, if the Bucs are struggling heading into that month, that's a real chance to gain some serious ground.
Yeah.
Like, let's say they've underperformed, things haven't really gone well. You're like, man, this team probably isn't making the playoffs. A good month, and all of a sudden they could very well win the division again. That's how having 4 divisional games of your last 5 is just pretty massive.
Yeah, and you alluded to it as well. Carolina being feisty at the end of the season, I don't entirely know where they're going to end up, but I have a good feeling that if he hasn't been fired by the end of the season, Dave Canales is going to have those guys in good shape. I mean, they bought into what he was selling last season. That much was evident. We talked with, I think it was Desmond Johnson about it as well. Like, he had a lot of really good insight about just the atmosphere around Carolina and how guys are kind of buying into Coach Canales. Now, is that to say that they're going to be a powerhouse? No, but they are a team that has been in a position to play upset before, especially for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who had playoff hopes on the line. So Bucs will have to absolutely take care of business here. Quick game against the Dolphins on the road, and then Week 18, you close things out on January 4th against the Carolina Panthers. So again, depending on what this division race looks like, if you've got the Falcons hanging on within 1 game, and you're not ready to sweep Carolina headed into that last week of the season, it's going to be a dicey finish with all of those division games crammed into the end of the season like that.
Yeah, and it definitely is. And like you mentioned, you're gonna know what Carolina is pretty much. And hey, if they're struggling, maybe that's a team that has simply, Week 16 is gonna roll around. They've packed it up, kind of, right? But at the same time, it is a divisional opponent, and they're gonna want nothing more than to spoil your season, which at that time of year very well could. So the Bucs are gonna have to be on their toes really all of December. That's really so. Yeah, I mean, yeah. fast start is important. With the first 4 or 5 games, we talked about, the middle or whatever, but I think, if this team with the way the funny thing is with the way the schedule is, and we talk about, well, they can't have that middle lull. With the way the schedule's set up, you almost kind of can. Like, but you have to, if you start fast, and then you finish strong, right? If you start fast and finish strong, you can almost kind of afford to drop, 2 out of 3 games or drop 3 straight games. Not saying it's a good thing, but like you can afford to maybe hit a little bit of that lull in the middle of the season, which we've seen Todd Bowles' teams do. We've seen them the past 2 seasons. They've only made the playoffs because they've gone on these late season surges. They've hit the midway point of the season and have looked, on the outside looking in pretty much. So I do think that if the Bucs start fast but finish strong, I still think that's a recipe because of how many divisional games, right? I mean, you're playing Atlanta week 1, and then you're playing Atlanta week 15. Right there, if you start fast and finish strong, you might be sweeping them. That's a huge boost. So, again, not saying a low in the middle is okay, but with the way the schedule is, it wouldn't exactly, I think, kill them where you would think maybe it would. But again, in the moment they lose like 3 straight games, you're probably gonna be saying like, "Oh my God, get me to the draft," basically. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But I mean, the December with 3 straight home games, I do like that. Um, we said 4 out of 5 are divisional games. Well, 3 of those 4 are home games, and
Yeah.
I do like that as well. Even though the Bucs have been like, besides like against the Panthers, like the Bucs have been a little bit better at on the road against these divisional opponents than they have at home. But it is what it is.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be honest with you as well. I think the implications of the NFC South division make these final few games a little more daunting than they actually are because they will decide your season. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're playing the Saints, who will be likely starting some janitor, from the team headquarters at quarterback by that time of the season. It, there's no excuse to be caught sleeping. If you show up and like they have in the past, if you show up and you're not ready to play, these teams will absolutely love to ruin your season. But with that being said, looking at these teams objectively, looking at the roster, no reason you shouldn't sweep the Saints. No excuses, right? The Falcons will be a legitimate test. The Carolina Panthers will be a legitimate test. I think we'll have a better idea of where that team is, obviously, by the time you see them all the way in Week 16 for the first time. But Arizona, I see that as a winnable game.
Mhm.
Miami, it's hard to not see that as a winnable.
I think Miami might be a down year.
That's what I'm saying. Like it just,
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, there are some. Obviously, there's some. And look, that's with every schedule, right? There's going to be some tough games. There's going to be some games where like the Bucs aren't going 17-0, right? Like they're not even going 16-1. So like they're gonna drop some of these games, right? The important thing though, like we always say, is win the games you're supposed to. And we said it a lot in the Brady era, right? Win the games you're supposed to. And then you can eke out, a bonus of 2 or 3 wins, right? So yeah, if you're supposed to beat the Saints twice, beat the Saints twice. Let's say you're supposed to split with the Falcons. Okay, split with the Falcons. That's 3 wins. Let's say you're supposed to sweep the Panthers, right? The Panthers have really struggled against the Bucs lately. Okay, that's 5 wins right there just in your division before you even start. So, and then, like you talked about, Arizona, and then you got New England and Miami. Let's say you win those. Well, then that's 8 wins right there. So, yeah, win the games you're supposed to win, and then you see what else happens. And I think that's the big thing there. So, again, we have a lot of time between now and August. It's going to come quickly, but we do have a lot of time. Obviously, a lot can change. Whether guys get injured in training, and this is not just for the Bucs, but for the teams that the Bucs are playing, right? Whether the Bucs, and also like the tough thing with that we always say every year with the season prediction show is once you get to week 8, week 9, week 10, we don't know who's going to be available,
Yeah.
right? We have no idea who's going to be available in these games because injuries are going to happen. Like guys are going to get banged up. They're going to miss games on both sides. So you never know. But yeah, I mean, there is some some interesting stretches for the Bucs, but yeah, none more important to me than those three straight NFC South divisional opponents there. That to me is just massive.
All right, officially we should be back. Sorry, folks. You gotta love technology when it just doesn't go your way. But we are back. We are officially wrapping up the show. Really, we were already on our way to wrapping things up, Evan. But I wanted to ask you one more question before we wrap up here, and I think this is a fun talking point because we know that NFL teams, they change every year. Last year's team is not this year's team. All of the opponents that we just picked out for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the schedule, those are not last year's teams. There's been some personnel changes. There's been some coaching changes. And the Buccaneers have had an offseason full of that. So when you look at this schedule and you look at the stronger opponents, the Eagles, the Bills, you look at these more high-quality opponents, I feel like in a lot of ways, there's X factors on this Buccaneers team that will make or break the season, I think is an okay way to put it. But my question is, what do you think the biggest X factor is going to be for the Buccaneers this season, whether it be a one player in particular, whether it be a position group, whether it not be any player at all, and it's, Todd Bowles making a coaching change. What do you think one of the bigger X factors from this offseason is that's going to help the Buccaneers maybe win more games than people expect, as optimistic as that sounds?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the one as far as just really quickly, because I have a bigger picture one, but as far as new additions go, I do wonder, how their rookie class is going to fare, because I think the rookie class could potentially play some significant roles. Obviously, Mecca Ibuka is going to be essentially a starter in this offense. Benjamin Morrison, Jamel Dean, odds are probably not going to be available for all 17 games, so he may be a starter. Jacob Parrish, probably you're starting nickel corner. So I mean, that's three guys right there that all could play, pretty significant roles. So I'm curious to see those guys in terms of new additions. And then as far as existing ones, I think an X factor has to be Baker Mayfield. I mean, when you look at the schedule here, right, and I understand that he's playing these defenses, right, not these quarterbacks, but you got C.J. Stroud, Jalen Hurts, Brock Purdy, which I know Brock Purdy, whatever, Jared Goff, Josh Allen, Matthew Stafford. That's a lot of high profile guys. And I think some of them might be quarterback duels, it just might be. And Baker's played well against some of these opponents, in particular, Philly. He's played well against Philly. So I mean, I just think in order for the Bucs to reach that next level, he's going to have to also reach that next level. And don't get me wrong, it's not just him, right? It's the entire team as well. But just as a talking point here, I think Baker Mayfield and a lot of the matchups, particularly on primetime, right? A lot of their primetime games are some high profile games here, high profile matchups. So, and then you're looking down the stretch at, that December stretch, 3 divisional games. You need your quarterback to be playing good football there. They just simply do.
Are you saying he can duel?
Saying he might be able to duel. I don't know.
You buying in? I like it. I had heard this talking point, or specifically this phrase mentioned on Real Bucs Talk. And I feel like it's a really good way to look at how the Buccaneers approach the offense this offseason. And honestly, I think the addition of a Mecca Ibuka is the biggest reason for it. But Michael Pless had brought it up with John Ledger, and he said that, the Buccaneers made an effort to raise Baker's floor.
Yeah.
And when you have the ability to do that, you can try and minimize, these critical mistakes at the end of the season, like we have seen. As much as we love Baker on this show, sometimes he has some bad tendencies. I mean, the brutal turnovers in these playoff games.
Yeah, I mean, still led the league in interceptions and fumbles. So
correct. So I think that's a good way of putting it. I like that you're coming around on Baker, though. That's the main takeaway I had from that, is that you're buying into the Baker Mayfield hype. I am buying into this Buccaneers pass rush. I know that the jury is out on Hassan Reddick. I know we have yet to see entirely what he will become. You got to hope that he returns to form, kind of the guy that he was in Philly. Had that bad situation with the Jets, was playing, I would say, uninspired football to end the year. It was what it was at that point.
Fun fact, Hassan Reddick plays every team that he's ever played for this season. So
there you go.
Jets, Eagles, Cardinals, Panthers, plays every team.
He gets all of his revenge games packed into one action-packed season. I mean, if you're going to have a contract year, that's the way to do it, right? You go out there and you show these teams exactly what they're missing. I hope that he comes in here and is that guy for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There's a report that he was, quote, pissed off coming into this season, and he's obviously playing with a chip on his shoulder. I would love to see that pay off. I'd love to see the continued development of all of these guys, especially on the interior. Kalijah Cansey, we cannot gush enough about. Yaya Diaby, it's a critical year for Yaya Diaby. I think if that sack total doesn't go up, the narrative around him, I mean, people are already kind of chirping at Yaya Diaby. You know how people get with these edge rushers. They get a little impatient in their development, but would like to see a little more production in terms of getting to the quarterback this season from Yaya Diaby. He was great at pressuring last year. The Bucs just were terrible at getting to the quarterback in general. You can pressure a guy all day. He can still make a play. So Chris Braswell, critical year for Chris Braswell. I think seeing where he steps into this lineup and seeing if he can take a step forward, had an abbreviated rookie season, I would say. He really came on late in the year, but that's just because he was getting more snaps. Talking about this Buccaneers draft this draft class from 2025, having all of your defensive linemen in there, and Elijah Roberts, and David Walker. Like, these are guys who can potentially contribute. And Elijah Roberts, I'm curious to see, just because I think he's going to be eating up more snaps early on in the season when you consider who he's stepping in to relieve. So I don't know. I would just like to see this pass rush help the Bucs win some of these games, because we know they've got a quarterback who can duel, in your own words. We know that they have got an offense that can put points up. Now, obviously, with Josh Grizzard and the OC, we'll see how smooth that transition is. But regardless, you've got the talent. You've got guys that have produced in this offense before. I have no doubt they can do it again. I would like to see the pass rush just take over a game completely, because if you've got an offense that's humming and you get, big-time third down sacks on 2 back-to-back drives, that's a game changer. And I would love to see that define some games for the Buccaneers in this 50th season. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for today's episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. I want to thank everybody for hanging out with us past these technical difficulties. If you are having audio issues, I do apologize. I've got my preview feed up. I don't have any audio issues, so I'm not sure if it's just a YouTube problem. Maybe try and refresh your stream. But regardless, the show's over. So if you're sick of listening to the terrible audio, you don't have to listen much longer. We do appreciate you toughing it out. And thank you to everybody for hanging out with us live tonight. The Cannon Fire crew in chat. Fred Moore, Very Thick Hog, MK, Mikey Kelly, Mr. Dub. Nothing in here as well. Steven Quintana. None of our mods. Oh.
It's all right.
That's all right. We'll see him in the next one. Yeah. We will talk to you guys in the next one. We got a show planned for you, I think, early on next week sometime. Yeah. We'll try and get a guest on as well and dive into some more of these Tampa Bay Buccaneer news and headlines. Follow the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And, of course, Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucs_Daily. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL. And check out his written work at BucsNation.com. You got anything in the hopper this week?
So, going to be taking, obviously now the schedule's out, going to be taking a look at just most anticipated Bucs games for this year, now that we have the dates and times and everything. And just something I did last year, I think I pick out like 3 games that I think are maybe the highest profile ones. So I won't do like 3 primetime games. That would be boring. I try to think of potential storylines with them as well. So definitely, most anticipated will be out on BucsNation.com shortly.
Last but not least, you can find myself Instagram and Twitter at Rhettakus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. And please check out my new project, Video Americana, all one word. We actually just released a feature that we have been working on for quite a while on Mel's Hot Dogs, a local Chicago hot dog joint down here. I know that sounds weird, a Chicago hot dog joint in Tampa, but they're doing something right because they've been open for 53 years.
They're older than the Bucs.
Yeah, I know. No kidding. We got to talk to Mel, the man himself, and the new owners, the general manager. All great people, great food. If you're in the area, check them out. And check out that feature at Video Americana. Please and thank you. You guys are the best. You are the greatest. I know people are dipping out left and right because of all this self-promotion, so this will be a great time to wrap the show up. Thank you again for hanging out with us live tonight as we break down the Buccaneers schedule. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, as always, my good buddy and co-host, Evan Wanish. We will see you in the next one. Until then, and as always, go Bucs.